If you are over 65, your body is not asking for more food, it is asking for better food. And today I want to talk about something most people have forgotten. Something humble, something inexpensive, something your grandparents knew well. I call it the forgotten egg, not the egg from a chicken, but the vegetarian egg, the soybean. For decades, soy was pushed aside, misunderstood, or replaced by heavy meat-based diets. But when we look closely, especially at the needs of aging bodies, soy quietly outperforms meat in ways that truly matter. Let's talk about why. If you are over 65, there is a silent question your body is asking every single day, and most people never hear it until weakness, bone loss, or fatigue forces them to listen. And that question is not how much food am I eating, but is this food helping me age or quietly accelerating my decline? Because after 65, the body no longer tolerates nutritional mistakes the way it once did. Muscle no longer rebuilds easily, bones do not forgive mineral loss, and digestion becomes less efficient with every passing year. And this is where modern diets fail older adults, because for decades seniors were told that meat is the ultimate protein, the gold standard, the only way to stay strong. Yet research has shown that high animal protein diets increase acid load in the body, forcing calcium to be pulled from bones to neutralize that acid, a process repeatedly observed in metabolic studies and associated with increased fracture risk in older populations. And this is why so many seniors who eat well still develop brittle bones, joint pain, kidney strain, and chronic inflammation. But there is another protein source, older than supermarkets, older than supplements, quietly used in cultures with some of the longest lifespans on Earth, and it has been so overlooked that most people don't even recognize it as what it truly is. A complete protein that behaves like an egg without the inflammatory cost of meat, the soybean, often called the vegetarian egg, because it contains all 9 essential amino acids required for muscle repair and cellular renewal, something very few plant foods can claim. And here is the shocking part. Studies comparing soy protein to animal protein show that soy supports muscle protein synthesis while producing significantly lower levels of inflammatory byproducts, meaning the muscles receive nourishment without burdening the liver and kidneys, organs that already operate under increased stress after 65. And this matters more than people realize, because kidney function naturally declines with age, and excessive animal protein accelerates this decline, while plant proteins like soy demonstrate a gentler metabolic footprint. And then there is the issue of bone health, the silent crisis of aging, where osteoporosis does not appear overnight but develops quietly over decades. And research published in nutrition and endocrinology journals has shown that soy isoflavones, naturally occurring compounds in soybeans, are associated with improved bone mineral density in postmenopausal women and older adults, not because they flood the body with hormones, but because they gently bind to estrogen receptors, offering a stabilizing effect at a time when the body is losing its own protective hormones. And this is one reason populations that consume soy daily, such as in Japan and parts of China, have significantly lower hip fracture rates compared to Western nations, despite lower calcium intake, a fact that continues to surprise researchers. And it doesn't stop there, because aging muscles are not only weakened by lack of protein, but by chronic inflammation. And meat-heavy diets are rich in arachidonic acid and advanced glycation end products, both linked to systemic inflammation, while soy contains antioxidants and anti-inflammatory compounds that actively reduce oxidative stress, something repeatedly observed in controlled dietary trials. And when inflammation is lowered, joints move more freely, circulation improves, and recovery from everyday activity becomes easier, which is why so many seniors who shift part of their protein intake to soy report less stiffness and better mobility within weeks. And then there is digestion, an often ignored but crucial factor, because after 65 stomach acid production declines, making heavy animal proteins harder to break down, leading to bloating, reflux, and poor nutrient absorption, while soy protein, especially in fermented forms like tempeh or traditionally prepared tofu, is significantly easier to digest, with fermentation breaking down anti-nutrients and increasing mineral bioavailability, allowing the body to actually absorb what it eats instead of merely processing it. And perhaps the most unsettling fact of all is that excessive meat consumption has been linked in large epidemiological studies to increased levels of IGF-1, a growth factor associated with accelerated aging and higher cancer risk when chronically elevated, while plant proteins like soy do not stimulate IGF-1 to the same degree, offering nourishment without pushing the body into constant growth mode when it should be focusing on repair and maintenance. And this is why calling soy 1,000,000 times better is not about exaggeration, but about suitability, because food must match the stage of life, and what fuels a growing body can harm an aging one. And the forgotten egg excels here because it nourishes without exhausting the system, supports muscles without stealing from bones, feeds the brain with steady amino acids without spiking inflammation, and protects the heart by helping lower LDL cholesterol through soluble fiber and phytosterols, a benefit repeatedly confirmed by cardiovascular research. And this brings us to daily life, because the power of soy is not in extremes, but in consistency. A small serving of tofu in a vegetable stir-fry, a bowl of fermented soybeans added to soup, a portion of tempeh lightly cooked with herbs, or unsweetened homemade soy milk, replacing one animal-based meal. These are simple shifts that compound over time, and longevity research consistently shows that the foods eaten daily matter more than those eaten occasionally. And when seniors replace even part of their meat intake with soy, markers of inflammation decrease, digestion improves, and energy stabilizes, not because soy is magic, but because it aligns with how the aging body actually works. And perhaps the most powerful truth of all is this: aging is not a sudden event, but a slow conversation between your cells and your choices, and every meal is part of that conversation. And when you choose foods that protect rather than provoke, that nourish rather than burden, you are not fighting aging, you are guiding it. And the forgotten egg has been waiting patiently for that realization, not flashy, not trendy, but quietly powerful, just like the kind of strength we all hope to carry into later life. After the age of 65, the body enters a quieter, more fragile chapter, one where strength is no longer built by force but by care. And yet this is the very stage of life when many people unknowingly overload their system with foods that strain the organs meant to keep them alive. Because for decades we were taught a single idea, that more meat means more strength, more protein, more survival. But science tells a very different story once the kidneys begin to age, because kidney function naturally declines by about 1% every year after 40. A slow, invisible loss that most people never feel until it is pushed too far. And the tragedy is that high animal protein diets accelerate this decline by increasing nitrogen waste, forcing the kidneys to work harder to filter urea and acid byproducts from the blood, a burden repeatedly documented in nephrology research, especially in older adults. And this is why mild kidney impairment is so common after 65, even in people who believe they eat healthy. Yet there is a protein that nourishes muscle without demanding this metabolic price, a protein so balanced that it behaves like an egg, but so gentle that it protects the kidneys instead of exhausting them. And that protein comes from soy, often called the vegetarian egg, because it provides all essential amino acids in proportions the body can actually use. And here is the part most people never hear. Studies comparing animal protein to soy protein show that soy results in significantly lower glomerular pressure in the kidneys, meaning less internal strain, less long-term damage, and better preservation of kidney function, something that becomes life-defining after 65, because once kidney health declines, everything else follows. Energy drops, blood pressure rises, toxins accumulate, and muscle recovery slows to a crawl. And speaking of muscle, aging muscle does not fail because it lacks protein alone. It fails because it cannot efficiently process what it receives, and heavy animal proteins require high stomach acid, strong enzymes, and robust liver function, all of which decline with age, while soy protein is absorbed more efficiently, delivering amino acids to muscle tissue without overwhelming digestion. And clinical trials have shown that soy protein supports muscle protein synthesis comparable to animal protein, but without increasing markers of inflammation or renal stress. And this is crucial, because inflammation is the silent thief of strength, and older adults consuming high meat diets consistently show elevated inflammatory markers like CRP, while diets incorporating soy demonstrate reductions in these markers over time. and the story deepens when we look at the bloodstream itself, because animal protein increases phosphorus load, something aging kidneys struggle to regulate, leading to vascular calcification and increased cardiovascular risk, while soy naturally contains phosphorus in plant-bound forms that are absorbed more slowly, reducing this dangerous spike. And this single difference may explain why populations with higher soy intake show lower rates of both kidney disease and heart disease in later life, even with lower overall protein consumption. And then there is the gut, an organ that quietly determines how well the body ages, because after 65 the microbiome becomes less diverse, digestion slows, and nutrient absorption weakens. Yet soy contains natural fibers and oligosaccharides that feed beneficial gut bacteria, producing short-chain fatty acids that reduce inflammation and improve insulin sensitivity. And this gut-kidney muscle connection is now a major focus of aging research, because a healthier gut reduces toxin load on the kidneys and improves amino acid delivery to muscles, creating a chain reaction of resilience. And perhaps the most overlooked benefit of soy is its effect on blood vessels, because kidney health and circulation are inseparable, and soy isoflavones have been shown in randomized trials to improve endothelial function, allowing blood vessels to relax and deliver oxygen more efficiently to muscles and organs, which is why older adults consuming soy often report improved stamina and less fatigue, not because they are eating more, but because their cells are finally receiving what they need, and the fear surrounding soy has often distracted from these facts. Yet decades of population data show that moderate traditional soy intake does not harm hormones, does not feminize the body, and does not damage health. Instead, it provides gentle hormonal modulation that becomes protective when the body's own hormone production declines, and this is especially important for older women, whose postmenopausal bone and muscle loss accelerates kidney strain through mineral imbalance, a cycle soy helps interrupt by supporting both bone density and muscle maintenance. And when we look at long-lived regions of the world, the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. Meat is eaten sparingly, protein is distributed across the day, and soy appears again and again in simple forms: tofu in soup, fermented soybeans, lightly cooked tempeh, foods that nourish without shocking the system. And longevity researchers consistently emphasize that the goal of aging nutrition is not maximum intake, but maximum efficiency, giving the body what it can actually use without damaging what keeps it alive. And this is why the vegetarian egg matters so deeply after 65, because it respects the limits of the aging body, while quietly strengthening it from within. And the final truth is this: strength in later life is not loud, it is stable. It is waking up without pain. It is walking without fear. It is knowing your organs are supported, not stressed. And every time you choose a protein that feeds muscle without harming kidneys, you are choosing years, not just meals. And the forgotten egg has been offering that choice all along, waiting for science to catch up and for wisdom to finally listen. In the quiet corners of the world where people live not just longer but stronger, where 80 and 90 are not endpoints but active chapters, there is a pattern that repeats itself so consistently that researchers can no longer ignore it, because longevity does not come from expensive supplements or extreme diets. It comes from ordinary foods eaten daily for decades. And when scientists began studying the regions with the highest concentrations of healthy elders, from rural Japan to parts of China and other traditional cultures, they expected to find secret medicines or rare superfoods, but instead they found something almost disappointingly simple: modest meals, small portions, and a protein choice that looks nothing like the meat-heavy plates common in modern aging societies. And again, sitting quietly at the center of these diets, was soy, the so-called vegetarian egg, eaten not as a trend but as a tradition. And what makes this so powerful is not cultural romance, but hard data, because these populations consistently show lower rates of hip fractures, cardiovascular disease, kidney failure, and age-related muscle wasting, even though they consume less total protein than Western seniors, a fact that initially confused researchers until they looked not at quantity but at quality and biological compatibility, because aging bodies are not designed to process food the same way young bodies do, and long-living cultures intuitively adapted their diets to that truth long before science could explain it. And one of the most striking differences is meat consumption, which is not eliminated but minimized, used as flavor rather than foundation, while plant proteins like soy quietly carry the nutritional load. And here is the scientific shock. Large epidemiological studies have shown that populations consuming higher levels of animal protein in mid to late life have higher mortality rates, particularly from cardiovascular and kidney-related causes, while those relying more on plant proteins show reduced mortality and better functional health. And soy stands out among plant proteins because it is complete, providing all essential amino acids without triggering the same metabolic stress responses. And when researchers measured markers of aging in these populations, they found lower levels of chronic inflammation, lower LDL cholesterol, and better insulin sensitivity, factors directly tied to longevity. And soy contributes to each of these through mechanisms that are now well documented, because soy protein has been shown to reduce LDL cholesterol by binding bile acids in the gut, forcing the body to use circulating cholesterol to produce more bile, a process recognized by major heart health organizations. And in long-living cultures, this translates into arteries that remain flexible longer, delivering oxygen to organs and muscles well into old age. And then there is bone health, one of the defining factors of independence in later life, because a fall does not become fatal due to the fall itself, but due to brittle bones. And yet Asian populations consuming traditional soy diets experience significantly lower hip fracture rates, despite consuming less dairy calcium. And researchers discovered that soy isoflavones play a key role by slowing bone resorption, the process by which bone is broken down faster than it is rebuilt, particularly after menopause. And this protective effect becomes more valuable with each passing year, because bones are living tissue, constantly responding to what the bloodstream delivers, and soy delivers signals of balance rather than depletion. And muscles tell a similar story, because sarcopenia, the age-related loss of muscle mass, is not merely about weakness, it is about survival, since muscle tissue regulates blood sugar, supports joints, and protects against falls. And studies comparing elderly populations show that those consuming soy as a regular protein source maintain better muscle function relative to body weight, not because they eat more, but because their muscles are less inflamed and better supplied with usable amino acids. And this is where modern diets fail. Seniors, by flooding the system with protein the body cannot efficiently use, leading to waste accumulation, kidney strain, and metabolic exhaustion, while traditional diets feed just enough in forms the body recognizes, and the kidney connection is impossible to overlook, because kidney disease rates are dramatically lower in populations where soy replaces a significant portion of animal protein. And nephrology research has repeatedly shown that plant proteins reduce glomerular pressure and protein leakage compared to animal proteins, meaning the kidneys age more slowly. And when kidneys age slowly, everything ages slowly, because toxins are cleared efficiently, blood pressure stabilizes, and energy production remains steady. And this is why elders in long-living cultures often remain active, walking daily, gardening, cooking, not because they exercise aggressively, but because their bodies are not fighting internal damage. And the gut plays a silent but decisive role here as well, because traditional soy foods are often fermented, a process that increases probiotic content and mineral absorption. And a healthier gut microbiome reduces systemic inflammation, improves immune response, and even supports brain health, something researchers now link directly to reduced dementia risk. And fermented soy like tempeh or natto contains compounds that improve blood flow and reduce clot formation, contributing to the remarkably low stroke rates observed in certain regions. And perhaps the most overlooked aspect of all is hormonal balance, because aging is not only about loss but about imbalance. And soy isoflavones act not as hormones but as modulators, gently supporting estrogen receptors when natural hormone levels decline, which may explain why older women in soy-consuming cultures experience fewer severe menopausal symptoms and slower bone loss. And men do not experience hormonal harm because these compounds are weak and self-regulating, binding where needed and stepping aside where not, a fact supported by decades of clinical observation. And when researchers step back and look at the full picture, the conclusion becomes uncomfortable for modern nutrition culture, because longevity is not built on excess, it is built on restraint, rhythm, and respect for the body's changing needs. and soy fits into this philosophy perfectly. Affordable, accessible, adaptable, nourishing without dominating the plate. And the elders in long-living cultures do not call it a superfood. They call it food, eaten daily, prepared simply, trusted quietly, and that may be the most important lesson of all. Because the human body does not need extremes to thrive in later life, it needs consistency, and when a protein source can support muscles, protect bones, reduce inflammation, ease kidney load, improve circulation, and nourish the gut all at once, it earns its place at the table. Not as a replacement for tradition, but as part of it. And this is why the vegetarian egg has survived centuries while trends have come and gone, because it works in harmony with the aging body. And as science continues to catch up with ancient wisdom, one truth becomes clear. Long life is not found in chasing youth, but in choosing foods that allow the body to age with dignity, strength, and grace. And for millions of elders across long-living cultures, that choice has quietly included soy, meal after meal, year after year, proving that sometimes the secret to longevity is not hidden, it is simply ignored.